Hi everyone, and welcome to the Odin School of Mysteries. My name is Bear. Thanks for joining me today. And I am drinking, the drink of the day is sheep dip. It's blended malt Scotch whiskey. I have been missing my father today, and this is one of his favorites, so I thought that maybe I would pour us some. So, listen, I know, here's to you, my friends. It's always been kind of a ritual to have something to drink while we do this. You know, I'm going to flip this over. There we go. I always naturally want to look over here to this side. So I know it's been a bit, right? Since I've sat down and done one of these videos. And I know it's been a while. But I have some good news. The good news is that my wife and I put in an offer in a house, and we got it. We got the offer in this market, which is amazing. And what's good about this is that the house in question has its own dedicated office space, meaning I can set up an actual studio, meaning I don't have to wait until my children are gone in order for me to sit down and actually record something. I could do it on a regular basis again, which is going to be great. Frankly, that's really great. I'm really excited about it. And you should be too, because now I could actually do this on the regular. And, you know, I've gotten emails from people who've been asking how I'm doing and if everything's okay. And you know who you are. I mean, that really means a lot. And I know that our YouTube community here on this channel is very small. I know that and I understand that. So it really means a lot that we've taken the time to look out for each other, and that's really important. There's not very many of us out there who like the truth and esotericism, and so we need to stick together. I don't know if you have a cigar or not, but if you are, you should. I'm smoking Brick House Maduro. I think it smells really good. To me, it smells a lot like alfalfa. A bit like a barnyard, you know? So what's interesting, like if you look at almost all alcohol and tobacco products have occultism on their packaging. Almost all of them. Like, you know, the sheep dip has Aries or a Baphomet. It just kind of depends on how you want to look at it. And they all do. If you look close enough, you'll see it. All-seeing eyes, horned eyes, you know. Oh no, the sticker pulled my thing off. Can get to stick back down. So it's pretty wild stuff. So I would like it if, before we get into this topic, we're going to talk about Thor's hammer today. And frankly, it's one of those subjects that's a little bit overdue. But before we get into that, leave a comment on specific things you'd be interested in hearing. Whether it's about a particular mystery school or a myth that you've been curious about, religious practice, or, you know, something like that. I haven't figured out how to do community posts. I'm pretty technologically illiterate, but I'm going to learn how to do those. And it'd be really great to know. I mean, like, it's great to know what I should talk about, you know, because it's kind of hard to come up with ideas sometimes. Which brings me to today's topic. Go. And I'm sorry for the background. There's someone down the street who's blowing leaves or something. It's really obnoxious. But I've actually kind of avoided talking about Thor's hammer, the Mjulnir, because it's one of those things that are like, it's overplayed, you know. So this is the way to talk about the mysteries. Big yummy cigar, deep shot of, very deep shot of whiskey. This is how to talk mystery. So, I've avoided talking about Thor's hammer. And the main reason is because it's just, there's so much, it's so ingrained in pop culture, it's so fantasized, it's so, I don't know what I'm not using the right word, saturated, that it's not that it's redundant. It's just that there is much more interesting things, in my opinion, to talk about. You know, everyone wants to talk about Thor's hammer. No one wants to talk about Mimir's well, or the planet associated with Mimir and its effect on the mind, or anything like that. No one wants to talk about that. No one wants to take a swing at the creation story, which I would like to talk about, actually, is a good idea. Everyone wants to talk about Thor's hammer because it's sexy. It's a very sexy topic. And it's one of those topics that really amuses me because it's very sexy, but it's also, I don't find it the most interesting, personally. And that's just my personal thing on it. But that doesn't mean that people aren't curious to know what it means. And so I think I've probably put it off for too long. Really, this is one of those things that the channel needs and that people need to hear about because it's important. But it's not, it's not as exciting to me as the Odinic myth, for example. Or frost giants. I think frost giants are more interesting. With that said, however, that's not to poo-poo it, because it's important. It really is important. It's just, I already said all the reasons. Myth as a school, right? So in the mystery schools, a mystery school is actually kind of a, damn, hold on. Just totally just ripped off my sticker, just ripped my whole, I'm trying to get it to stick back down. Shame on you, Black Horse. Not cool. Brick Horse. Shame on you, Brick Horse. So you have different schools, right? And the way, so when you say mystery school, really what that is that's and a big umbrella term for what is essentially a lot of little schools inside a particular philosophy. So the way a school works is really, it's a looking glass. Each school is a looking glass that allows us, that gives us a rubric in order to see the truth and understand it. Right? So there is ritualistic magic, for example. There's poetry and writing. There's mythology. There's astrology. There's astrotheology. And really, astrotheology and astrology are really the same thing. Right, and then there's like Seder, the study of fates, and then there's runology, and so there's a bunch of these schools in here, and each of these schools they give you the rubric really, so you have something to look at to measure things against, because that's truth is too big to understand otherwise. And so, I come from the school of mythology. The school of mythology. My friend Alex, who is sometimes does videos on here, she comes from the school of astrology and Seder. Those are her schools. So I use mythology to help me understand astrology. She uses astrology to help her understand mythology. So we're both looking at the same information, but the school itself is what disseminates the information so that we have a rubric for understanding things that wouldn't normally have a really good way of really being able to think about them rationally, right? Because they're too big. It's like trying to understand, planetary physics outside of mathematics, right? It's like, without mathematics, you can't really understand planetary physics very well. So mathematics then becomes a school. It becomes a mystery school, if you're using mathematics correctly. Because God and math and psychology and biology and numerology and astrology and astrotheology and mythology, all of these are just the same thing. It's all the same elephant. The only difference is which side of the elephant you're looking at it from. So when we're dealing with the school of mythology, and I always teach from the school of mythology, is there's a trick to it, really. You can't just believe the story as, like, in the sense of historicity, right? Because that's not a very good way of looking at it. And the Christians fall into this trap all the time. They get so stuck in the historicity of their belief systems, they take it so literal that they miss all the good stuff, all the golden nuggets at the inside of the bedrock. So you have to chip away the bullshit to get to the gold on the inside. And chipping away the battle that it takes, right, to wield your pickaxe and really dig into the bedrock to get to the gold is what we call the dragon, right? It's the effort, the work, the tirelessness that is required in order to spend the time to get to the good stuff. I have one of my students, she's been at it for a couple of years now, and finally she's getting to the really interesting stuff, because it actually takes a long time. And she hasn't been in work, right? She doesn't have any kids. So she was able to just go at this full time, 24 hours a day, basically, with no schedule, to go and just do the mysteries full time. And it's taken her almost 3 years now of solid work to finally get to the point where she's starting to really understand the language of what's actually being said here. And so the way you could kind of short circuit this process, especially in mythology, is what you do is you kind of strip out all the bullshit, right? So you say, okay, let's take away the name Thor, because Thor has baggage. Let's take away all the characters, and let's boil Thor down to his essence, right? Because we're talking about Thor's hammer today, you can't talk about Thor's hammer without talking about the god himself. And so when you strip Thor down to his base essences, what is Thor's main objective? If we're dealing with stories, and I'm a writer, I like to write stories. If you go to writing school, one of the first things that they try and tell you about writing is, okay, well, what does your character want? What does your character want? Right? The bad guy, when you watch these movies, the most boring movies are the bad guys who are just bad just cuz. Right? Those are the boring stories. Those are the stories that no one wants to listen to, right? And the good guy is just the good guy just cuz. Because the screenwriter said, this guy's the good guy, therefore he's the good guy. And, but real life doesn't work that way. There really isn't a good guy and a bad guy. There's just two people who want different things. And we've decided that one thing is better than the other thing. Which brings me to like my main critique. So, of people who worship Odin, and I'm an Odinist. In some ways, you could call me a monotheist in the fact that I really don't worship or pay any attention really to any other god besides Odin. That doesn't mean that I don't want to get off on a rabbit trail, but I'm an Odinist. And so I like Odin. But my major critique with a lot of Odinists is that they say that Odin is a war god. And I've said this before 100 times in this channel. Odin isn't a war god. Because if you look at his main motivation in life is not war. He has two main motivations. His primary motivation is wisdom, and he has a secondary motivation, which is to become prepared for Ragnarok, right? Those are his two major things. He's going to prepare for Ragnarok. Those are his two big things that he wants to do. It's one, wisdom, two, Ragnarok. And so when we see warlike things happen that Odin is associated with, it's not because he loves war. War is simply just the means to getting to his motivation, right? It's a means, not an end. So what happens when we do this to Thor? What is Thor's motivation? Well, Thor is war. Thor's main motivation is war. Thor loves to fight. So what is war, though? War is, if we're going to talk electricity, war is energy out. It's energy out. So you could call it the anode in a battery. Energy that moves out of the power source. Or you could call it the positive, the plus sign. This is not to say, in this case when I'm saying positive, I'm not saying that it's a good thing. Like we say, oh, that's a positive result. That's not what I mean. I'm talking in terms of electricity. In an electrical circuit, the positive charge is the charge that pushes the energy outward. which is why men or masculine energy is energy out. Feminine energy is energy in. You understand? So Thor is pure energy out. That's all he is. He's pure sacred masculine. He's pure sacred masculine. So, and I apologize. We're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to talk about the differences between the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine. I know I do this all the time, but sometimes when we're dealing with these things, we have to define our terms. Not everyone has seen every episode. Not everyone understands all of this. So sometimes it becomes necessary to take a quick break and just simply define our terms so that going forward, someone who isn't used to this way of thinking can understand. When I say sacred masculine and sacred feminine, what do I mean? The sacred feminine is defined as information that is not quantifiable. All right? It's non-concrete thought. It's the kind of knowledge you get from hugging your mom, right? Feelings of love, artistic prowess, right? It's eternity. It's the feeling of home. You know, these are all sacred feminine things. It's all energy brought in. So if you think in terms of sex, just physical sex, the sacred feminine, the woman receives energy in, right? It's energy brought into the body. That's what she does during sex. The man comes into the female, and then the man ejaculates, right? Energy in. And that's why sun gods are always male, because the night sky, the sacred feminine who receives the sun at night, right? She receives the sun into herself when the sun sets. That is her receiving the sun, her receiving the seed, and then she gives birth to it in the morning. Birth is energy out. It's energy out. Okay. Sacred masculine is knowledge that is not quantifiable. Is this filming me upside down? Now I wonder if this is filming me upside down. You know what? I'm just going to roll with it. And we'll just, it'll be exciting. We'll find out. Okay? Hopefully it's not upside down. Energy. So sacred masculine, it's energy pushed out, like I said. It's things that are quantifiable on a piece of paper. Mathematics, logistics, engineering, science, logic, wisdom is typically considered masculine because it's things that you could write it down on a piece of paper and you could crunch the numbers and you could figure it out. The sacred feminine is emotion, right? It's the part of the psyche that feels things. The sacred masculine is devoid of emotion. It has no creative ability. It can't create anything new, right? Sacred feminine can create something new, but if she doesn't have any sacred masculine to balance it out, you get horrible things. right? You get horrible things. You don't have anything in your head saying, well, maybe this isn't a good idea, right? Which is why the creation of Sophia, when Sophia made Yaldabaoth in the Gnostic myths, which is why she was described by the Gnostics as an aborted fetus, because she created him without the input of the sacred masculine, right? So bad things come if you don't create with the sacred masculine, and vice versa. The sacred masculine can't create. And which is why, in a world of blind, ignorant people, sacred masculine, the masculine power always becomes out of control. It always starts to dominate because it has no, what? Emotion. It has no emotion to go along with it. So it just takes things over. It just says, screw everybody else. Screw what you want. Screw your family. Who cares about your children? I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and you can just suck my dick. And that is basically kind of Thor's attitude. And does that make Thor evil? No. And that's a major mistake that people make, is they say, well, it's bad, this is bad and evil, or it's good, but that's not the way the universe is. There's no real evil, at least not in the context of what we're saying. I mean, I definitely think there's evil people in the world. Oh, that's a lot better. I definitely think there's evil people in the world, for sure. But when we're talking about philosophy like we're talking about, it doesn't make it evil, it just makes it unbalanced. Which is why Thor is always going, energy out, to war. He's called a murderer, right? So if you die in battle, or honorably, or whatever, it says that you're killed by time, or Odin. But if you're murdered, or die unhonorably, you're killed by Thor, right? The murderer. It doesn't mean that he's evil. It just means that he has no sacred feminine. He doesn't have the ability to rationalize in terms of what his actions are going to do to affect other people, which is why he is both a blessing and a curse to have around, because he's quite literally a hammer, and sometimes he uses that hammer to hit a nail, and everyone's like, yay, that's the greatest thing ever. And sometimes he hits a baby, and everyone's horrified, right? You don't really get both things. You don't, it's not really an ideal way to go about it. But what we say about war gods is war gods are always the progenitor. They're always what the wisdom god starts off as. So Thor is basically Odin before Odin discovered wisdom, before Odin gave his eye, right? Before Odin discovered the runes. This is who Odin used to be before he came into equilibrium. Does that make sense? So what can we say about Thor? Thor is energy outward minus forethought. He doesn't have any forethought. See what I did there? Huh? It's funny. Forethought. No forethought. Because what is forethought? I'm going to say forethought. Forethought requires what? Requires imagination, right? It's when you look, the sacred masculine is the part of you that looks at the pattern, and the sacred feminine is the part of you that, based on the information that's given to you, it makes an educated guess on what's going to come into the future. If I do this, then XYZ is most likely what's going to happen next. So it's a marriage between the two sexes, right? You have to have both. You have to have both things, which is why you have, it's called the upward pyramid or the upward pointed spear, Mjulnir, right? A spear that's pointed down, it topples, right? It doesn't have any foundation to it. That's some good shit right there. Am I making sense? I really hope I'm making sense. So, thinking into the future is sacred feminine. Thor doesn't have any sacred feminine qualities. So, what do we see with his hammer? How does he use his hammer? Well, his hammer is thrown what? He throws his hammer. Energy out. And really, that's all there is to it. I mean, it's really not more complicated than that. It's a blunt edge. It's pure destruction. You know, with the sword, it's a fine tool. It's something that you use to slice things cleanly, right? You would much rather me cut off your head with a sharp axe or a sword than me try and cut off your head with a hammer. Right, we're going to have very different results between the two things. One is just pure destruction, which is what Thor is. Thor is pure destruction. He's chaos. Again, that doesn't make Thor evil, doesn't make chaos evil. It just is. It just is. You say that again. It just is what it is, right? It doesn't make it evil. It just makes it is. So when we utilize Thor energy, which is also Mars, if you are, I think Mars is Roman, Aries, if you're Greek, Ninurta, if you're Sumerian, if we utilize this kind of energy, you get very quick results, which is why the sacred masculine is usually worshipped in blind, unconscious societies. Right. They love the sacred masculine because you don't require to feel anything for anybody. You just do things, and who cares if it hurts anyone, because the ends always justify the means, and the means are always violent. But that really is a handicap, right? We think on the surface, well, that's great. You know, I could just punch somebody in the face until they give me what I want, you know, which is what the government does. The government punches you in the face. You know, we call it the government gun. Why do we call it the government gun? Because at the end of every law ends in a gun at some point, right? Even simple taxation. You give me your money or else. Right? Give me your money, and if you don't give me your money, I'm going to either steal your wages, I'm going to harm you or lock you in a cage, or I'm going to punch you in the face until you give us what we want. Sacred masculine, Thor energy. But this doesn't work very well, because if we look in the myths, how often do we find that Thor gets his ass kicked. A lot. Thor gets his ass kicked a lot. By what? By people with imagination. With people with simple imagination, kick his ass all the time. Loki always gets one over on Thor. Constantly. And it's not until Loki usually has to fix a problem. So, actually, no. Let me stop for a second. Because Loki is actually really an interesting... is really an interesting thing to kind of compare Thor to. Because they're frenemies, right? They love each other. They're buddy-buddy. But they also always butt heads. Kind of like my cousin and I, my late cousin. Because Loki, when he gets drunk, he doesn't think anymore. And he just does things without thinking. Sacred masculine. He becomes sacred masculine. Drinking kills his sacred feminine. And so then he does something stupid, right? He cuts Sif's hair. And Thor, the blunt instrument, goes and, if you read Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman, right? He goes off and threatens to break each of Loki's bones every day until he fixes the problem. And then when Loki isn't drunk, he has the ability to think, and then he could go and solve any problem, right? Because he has sacred feminine. We covered this in depth in the story about how the gods got their wall. If you haven't seen that, you should go back and watch that video. Because we see sacred feminine energy at play in that story. The ability to have creative thought to solve problems. And, that's how Odin got his horse. Odin's horse was the son of Loki. But it's a... But that's kind of what we're dealing with. I just need to check on the time real quick. Let's see, how do I check my time? Can I check my time? I can't check my time. So, where was I? So with Loki, we see both things, right? We could see, and you can have your arguments on whether or not Loki is good or bad. I kind of think, again, he just is. Right, he just is. I think he's probably very egotistical and self-centered, but I don't necessarily think he is just pure evil either. But, Loki's very dangerous because he's balanced when he's sober. When he gets drunk, he says the wrong things. He doesn't think things through. He loses his forethought, and bad things happen. Same thing with Thor. The gods say all the time, when Thor is off killing frost giants, Asgard is a lot more peaceful, but is a lot more vulnerable as well. Right? You need to have sacred masculine in your life in order to get things done. It's will. It's the will to do anything. Without will, there's no forward movement. You have to have enough will to get up in the morning. You have to have enough will to make yourself toast. You have to have enough will to do anything. So when we're dealing, like, say, with magic, for example, and visualization and that kind of, other types of ritualistic magic, will is a primary component. You have to have enough will to push the creative process forward. Right? So if you're writing a book, writers have to have a lot of what? They have to have a lot of creative sacred feminine, a lot of creative ability, but they also have to have enough will. And that's very difficult for artists. Because being artistic is, sacred feminine, but sacred feminine has no will. You have to have the masculine in there in order to fertilize the egg. Not enough fertilization, you don't get a good birth. You get the aborted fetus, right? So you have to have enough fertilization in order to access the baby. And the baby is what is born out into creation. And that's really hard for artists, right? A lot of artists are very creative, which obviously, but you have to have enough work ethic, enough will, enough sacred masculine to actually sit down and write the book. To get up every day and write. Even if you don't want to, you get up and write. Even if you don't want to, you get up and you do the YouTube video. Or you paint the painting. Or anything like that. You have to have enough will to do it day in and day out. And most people can't do that. Which is why most people aren't masters. Most people aren't Van Gogh or Monet or Taylor Swift or whatever, because you have to have the will to get up and do it. I can't remember if it was Joe Rogan or who was that other guy? He's the black comedian who's always in controversy. It always amuses me that controversial comedians are the most uncontroversial people ever. I can't remember his name now. I just slipped my mind. But they were saying, everyone wants to be like Kevin Hart or some of these guys, but they're not willing to go to the open mic nights, night after night, and bomb, night after night. Practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing until you finally get it. And basically becoming a master is really the act of failing upwards, right? You fail until you're the best at it. Elon Musk, when he made, is that League of Legends? Dota. I think it was Dota. If you don't know, I don't even really know very much about it. It's a game. It's an online game. I think it's a live action strategy game, right? And you have these characters and you compete in these arenas with real people. But his company, Elon Musk's company, was one of the first people to make a AI that could play it. And how did the AI, not only did he make an AI that could play it, because there's been AIs who could do it, but it became the best in the world, and only like a few dozen people have ever beaten it. And how did it become a master at playing the stupid game? It became a master by failing thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of times. It failed over and over and over again. And they gave the AI basic parameters, like, okay, this is how the game works, and dying is bad, right? We don't want to die. So the AI learns from itself by playing millions of games and failing over and over again. Until suddenly, now you have an AI that's unconquerable. And only the master of the masters can beat it. It's will. The AI, I doubt that the programmers knew what they were doing, but they were basically building in will into a computer. Because a computer doesn't know it's not supposed to give up. That's not even, you don't program a computer to give up. You program the computer to keep running simulations over and over again until you start to win. And Thor and his hammer represents the will to continue. And so Thor's hammer, which is, I didn't bring a pen out. I should have, because I really need to write this down. There's a thing called the Tau cross. It's basically a stick. Okay. Think of a uppercase letter T, right? It's just a stick like this. This is called the Tau cross. It's a masculine symbol. So you'll see this all over. So like if you go in, like a good example, back in Italy in 2017 or 2018, somewhere in there, Trump was really popular in Italy for a while. And they made this huge moving statue of Trump, right? And he had symbols all over his body. And if you look down in his groin area, well, what do you see? You see a Tau cross sitting right there on his groin. What are they saying by putting this male generative principle in his groin? Well, what they're saying is he's a hammer. That's what a Tau cross is. This is what this is. You see that? This here, this is an Odin. We have a Od on here. But a Tau cross is this. It's a T. Basically, not to get too crass, but it's a cock and balls, is what it is. If you look at some early Christian art, wait a second. The cigar went out. Let's just say this. If you think for a second that Christianity isn't steeped in occultism, I got a bridge to sell you, buddy. Because Christianity is steeped in occultism. And if you look at some of the Christian iconography of Jesus hanging on his cross, they hang him on a Tau cross. Not all the time. There's plenty of examples of him not being on a Tau cross. But there is also lots of examples of him being on the Tau cross, hanging on the sacred masculine. Which is why the sacred masculine is often called the animal, right? The ability to not really ration, not to feel wonder. Wonder is a sacred feminine thing. It's knowledge that isn't given through linear survival instinct, for example. It's called the animal, the beast, right? It's the thing that goes out and wants to devour the world. It's the roaming tiger, right? It's the lion of Judah. It's the thing that goes out and just conquers. And so Thor's hammer is that Tau cross. It's that thing. He's the god that wields his cock and balls. Was it Johnson? Yeah, it was Johnson. He had a big dick. And he knew he had a big dick. And in fact, he was known to just whip it out and flop it on the desk to intimidate senators and other people to get them to do what he wanted them to do. He's like, well, you think you're so tough. Look at my dick. Plop. Right? And they were so taken aback by its size that they're like, okay, whatever, dude. Whatever you want. Please put it away. Which is where we get the term the Johnson, right? I'm going to whip out my Johnson. But that's because he had this reputation of just whipping out his dick, to get things done. Which is, it's the masculine principle. And if people are blind, deaf, and dumb, in occultism we call them the dead. It's not a flattering term, but it's just a term, and I get it. I think it's an insult. It's often used as an insult. But, that becomes the most primary form of power because, like animals, it's the strongest of the fittest. It's whoever's the most vicious, brutal, and animalistic person who's willing to stand on the necks of anyone who comes in contact with them with cleats on. That's that's what we're dealing with. But that is what the Thor's hammer really represents. It represents will. It represents will. It's the will to stand up. It's the will to get up in the morning. It's the will to create a YouTube video. It's the will to do all of this kind of thing, right? It's the ability to make effectual change in the universe is what it represents. So the true esotericist doesn't wear the Thor's hammer in order to say, look at me, I'm just a pagan. And I know a lot of people do. But the Thor's hammer says, will. I will ... People don't realize that when they say, I will do something. When you say, I will do something, I will go to the store. What you're actually saying is, will isn't saying like something, an event I'm going to participate in the future. What it's saying is, I have enough sacred masculine, I have enough power within me that I will this into creation. I will this into reality. I will the journey to the store to pick up milk for my family into creation. I will it into a happening. I will creation to bend to my will. Really? I'm going to bend it to my will? I will bend it to my will. Why do you think people are named William? Will. I will it. I do as I wilt. Do what thy wilt will be the whole of the law. If you take not Eliphas Levi. Oh crap! What is his name? I must be forgetful today. Crap! What is his name? It's not Levy. It's oh my gosh! He's that big occultist in the early 20th century. Not Levy. It's damn it. Man, I'm sorry. I just completely lost it. He's one of those guys who are that you kind of have to take the attitude, do as they say, not as I do, because he completely broke all his own rules. Oh my God. He actually believed he was the reincarnation of Levi. Shit. Oh well. I can't get stuck on it. It's just one of those things that, it's right there, and I can't, I have lost it. You could picture his face. You know, I could picture his face. Anton LaVey. That's what, no. Anton LaVey is the creator of the Satanic Church. Shit. Okay, well, I don't know. I'm going to have a little bit more, if you don't mind. I don't know about you, but I'm having a great time. Oh, shit, it's just going to bug me. I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments. Oh, my God. I don't know. I completely lost it. I'll probably wake up in the middle of the night and sit straight up. It's like, oh, there's this guy. But do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. Which I think, and I really believe, is I think it's a blind. And it's a rather good blind, because people, they say that what he's saying is whatever you want to do, therefore that's law. And I don't think that's actually what he's saying. And I think he himself even misunderstood what he was saying, to be honest. Do what thou wilt is the whole of the law is not saying that whatever you want to do is therefore law. I think what it is saying is the ability to understand law and what law is should be what you ought to be willing into creation. That's why I think the true interpretation of it is. But other people say that what he's trying to say is that whatever you want should be what law is. And I don't think that's what it is. I don't think that's what he's saying. But it kind of falls into this same idea, you know, where do what thou wilt should be the whole of the law. The idea of will, putting enough will into creation in order to make something happen is how things are made. And, you know, I've said for a long time, I could, if you want to be a billionaire, you want to have billions of dollars in the bank account. I could tell you how to do that. I could be a billionaire if I wanted to. I know how the process works. And I'll show you. I'll tell you how to be a billionaire. You know, want to know how to be a billionaire? Figure out a business idea. Work 18 hours a day for every day for 15 years and you'll be a billionaire. You will. It's physically impossible for you not to be a billionaire if you do that. Physically impossible. But what do you have to do in order to get there? You have to have sacrifice. You have to sacrifice. You have to sacrifice a lot. Your kids will never know you. Your wife will never see you in her bed. You'll be never home. You'll never have time to go out with your buddies. You won't have any life outside of work. Everything you do will be bent to the will of having $1 billion in your bank account. Yeah?
You're on.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I got to wrap this up. Actually, it's perfect because it's just an hour. But that's how you do it. That's how you get to be a billionaire. But who among you are willing to do that? Turns out my kids are home. So this is a good wrapping up point. Chances are that not very many of you are willing to do that. To give that much up. To be the next Elon Musk. So, I'm going to have to let you go. And I appreciate that you spent the time with me. I hope if you drank with me, you drink responsibly. And I hope you all have a great day. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I love you all. Go in peace. And I should be in my new house mid-November or so. And I'll be able to do this every week again. So, the gods be with you, my friends. Remember, eyes to the skies. Something is coming. Something big. Something that makes coronavirus seem like child's play. So keep your eyes to the skies. It's coming. See you all next time. Bye-bye.